What's going on, everybody? It's RoarYJ coming at you with a brand new video, and I'm very excited because today I get to bring to you my branded Despia, Bestial, whatever you want to call it, deck profile, and I've been having so much fun with this deck. It's the deck I've decided to play for this format because it is arguably one of the best decks right now. I just love the resource game and all the advantage that it can generate. It can like literally go from 0 cards in hand to 5 cards in hand in the span of an end phase, and I just really like the plays that the deck can do, especially as someone that's just such an avid fusion enjoyer. Anyways, I don't want to waste any more time. I'm going to go ahead and get right into my branded deck profile. Let me put this off to the side here. I also do want to apologize in advance if there are any random disturbances in the microphone. There is someone in the other room watching Jurassic World very loudly. But also, I do want to say that I will be doing this more so in terms of engines instead of going monster spells and traps, so it could end up being a little bit confusing, but if you get lost at any point, I will have my sidebar up as always in the correct order. So starting us off, of course, with the Despia cards, we have 3 copies of Albaz, the Jester of Despia, 1 copy of Despian Tragedy, 1 copy of Ad Libitum of Despia, and 3 copies of Branded Opening. So this is, of course, the main and best package in the entire deck. Of course, Albaz being a 1-card combo to access literally any combo you want in your entire deck, Tragedy being able to search Albaz, or the Ad Libitum literally getting you back anything you really feel like that's banished or in your graveyard just by being used as fusion material, and then Branded Opening is like the best consistency piece in the deck, especially as a starter or extender. Not to mention, I've seen a lot of people they've been talking about cutting down Branded Opening to like 2 copies. Personally, I haven't had too much issues. I mean, if you draw multiple, you can either use it for follow-up, you can use it for discard fodder, because it can protect engrave, you can use it to, like, do something else, like, you can even search, like, I mean, remember, Branded Opening doesn't have to special summon, like, if you open a Albaz Branded Opening, you can just use this to grab, like, an Ad Libitum or something. I'm really happy with the ratios, I'm really happy with how the Despia stuff's been performing lately, and I don't think currently I would change anything about it. Next up, we have the Bestial Engine, if you can even really call it that. It's just a single copy of Bestial Lubellion and a single copy of Bestial Saronir. These cards are fine. I mean, obviously, Bestial Lubellion is really nice for getting access to your branded Lost from deck. I'm no longer playing the Regained or the Beast. I cut Regained like ages ago because it was just really win more and I wanted more consistency pieces. And then Beast, I love Beast, I really do, especially because it means if I draw Lost, I can still go for the Lubellion combo reliably. But at the same time, it's like, if I have to draw Beast going second one more time, I think I'm going to lose it. And then Saronir being part of the Mercurier Banish combo that involves Rinbrum. I don't really do that combo too much anymore. I mean, it's very rare that I even open the combo considering Lubellion's at 1 in this deck. But it also serves as a fine disruption and a fine thing to dump off of something like Dongino. But honestly, even with my local scene having a lot of Rogue, I really wouldn't play more Bestials. Honestly, I've been citing them out, like both of them going second in a lot of games because they just really don't do anything. Next, we have Albaz and all of his friends, 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz, 2 copies of Tri-Brigade Mercurier, 1 copy of Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous, 1 copy of Spriggan's Kip, and 1 Albion the Shrouded Dragon. So I am only on the 2 copies of Albaz. I haven't played against enough Castro to warrant playing a 3rd, and even for the Castro players I have played against, I mean, they don't really mill too many off of it. Like, I think there's been 1 time where they have, but it was already a losing hand anyway, so I didn't really have anything I could have done. I'm still a big fan of Double Mercurier, having 1 to banish for any combo, like a Gold Sark, or just off of your Saronir, or something like that, and then having 1 for, like, a Nibiru negate, or for, like, an unnegate on your opponent's turn. That's another cool thing, you can have 1 for your turn for a Nib negate, and then 1 for your opponent's turn. I really like Mercurier. Plus, I mean, at the end of the day, you can always just banish it off of, like, a Branded in Red or something. So far, I've been fine with the 1 Cartesia. I'm not saying that I wouldn't like to try out a second, but I'm not really in the financial position to like want to pick up another copy of Cartesia. Like, she is still really, really pricey. But honestly, the 1's been fine so far. There just are situations where having the 2nd would be nice. Though, admittedly, I don't even play a 2nd Gronguinol or anything, so it wouldn't be that great. It's just mainly getting it hit off of certain things, or like getting rid of it off of a Branded in Red and then wanting 1 later. So Spriggan's Kit is a card that I do enjoy. I really like that she can help extend sometimes, and she can also be a good follow-up play. And also, I like that she's a beast, so she does synergize with, there was a certain situation, it was when I didn't have Guardian Chimera, funnily enough, where I was under Rivalry, and if I had Chimera, I would have won, because I could have normaled Kit, and then used Branded in Red to add back an Albaz and go for a Guardian Chimera. That would have been really fun. But also being a beast does mean you can make Rinbrum off of her. She's not the best thing in the deck, and admittedly, if you feel like you could easily cut her, but I really like Kit, as you can tell from the channel and from the mat and everything like that. So I'm gonna see see if I can keep having her in the deck, honestly. And then, of course, the one copy of Albion the Shrouded Dragon. This card's insane. Like, the amount of times I've drawn a Luber or Branded Fusion off of this card is wild, or like a hand trap or something. The only disappointing part was one of my losses yesterday when I was at locals. It was I opened a Luber for my opening hand, I drew a Luber for turn, and then I Albion effect, sent Retribution, drew a Luber. It was really frustrating, but I mean, honestly, like, Albion is it's just such a good card. Like, I can't complain about this guy at all. And then finally, he's not part of Albaz's gang, but he might as well be the single copy of Dark Magician. This card's absurd. I mean, not Dark Magician itself, but going into Dragoon is absolutely ridiculous in this deck. And drawing the Dark Magician isn't even a brick, funnily enough. If you draw it, your combo is actually even better, because you can just discard it off a Lubellion and then put it back instead of whatever you were going to do, like making Mirror Jade. I love Dragoon. I love it so much. For the rest of the branded spells and traps, I'm on, of course, 3 copies of Branded Fusion, one of the best cards in the entire game, 1 copy of Branded Lost, 1 branded in red, 1 branded Banishment, 1 branded Expulsion, and 1 branded Retribution. So, Branded Lost is a card that I've considered bumping up to 2 copies, like how they used to play Branded, because this card literally will win games on its own, especially in a matchup like, for example, Trap Tricks. There's been a lot of Trap Tricks players at my locals, of course, because it's gotten really popular. This card just wins you the game because they can't use any of their disruptions. They can't use any trap holes, except for, like, you know, obviously things like Gravediggers if you use a certain effect in hand or grave, but, like, they can't use any of their on-summon trap holes when you fusion summon. And then, of course, if you make Dragoon on top of the Branded Lost, you have an Omni Negate for anything they might have, so it's kind of just lights out. I don't think, if this card hits the board, I don't think I've ever actually lost, is the crazy thing. And then Branded in Red is a card that I've had a few situations where a second one would have come up, but honestly, I feel like it's not like the most important card ever. You can recycle it if you really need to, so having it at 1 is still fine, though I would probably be open in the future to maybe playing a second copy. I do like the Branded Banishment, because I do go for the Lubellion combo, as I mentioned earlier, dumping Bestial Lubellion off of Branded Fusion and then going for that. So Branded Banishment ends up being really nice there. Also, being able to Super Poly with your opponent's stuff should it come up is pretty nice. I am maining the Branded Expulsion. This is what I cut the Beast for, and honestly, it's been pretty good so far. I've gotten things like Albaz on board to go for a quick fuse. I've gotten even cards like Evenly Matched Block. I don't know if they've actually ever had Evenly Matched, but it's a good thing to block out Evenly Matched. And then also you can summon things like Cartesia if you really want, and I've even summoned in a Luber once or twice so that I can get a free search. It's pretty nice. I mean, obviously having it in the main deck is a little bit bricky, but honestly I'd rather see this than Branded Beast, because I'll at least have a fusion a little bit more often than I'll have a Bestial. And then of course the 1 branded Retribution, best card in the entire deck. For some more consistency cards, I'm on 3 copies of Fusion Deployment, 1 copy of Gold Sarcophagus, and 1 copy of Foolish Burial. Fusion Deployment, I actually had it 2 at one point, funnily enough, but then I bumped it back up to 3 when I realized just how absurd it was, even if I opened multiples, because you really want to see this card. Getting access to Cartesia is huge, and even going second, this can get you an Albaz from deck, which is really nice. I'm also on the Neospatian Aqua Dolphin package as well. I'll just tell you that now in the side deck, so this ends up coming up a lot for that. I've ripped so many ashes, but Fusion Deployment, one of the best cards in the deck. And then Gold Sark, obviously, hit Tragedy, hit Mercurier. Foolish Burial, hit Tragedy, or anything else you want to dump if you have like a Sar in your hand or whatever. Both of these cards are really nice extra consistency pieces, and if you end up not needing them, again, like with Branded Opening, you can just discard them. As you've probably heard, with Castra as the best deck, and all of the other decks that came along with it, hand traps have actually come back significantly into the format, which is why I'm on 3 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being, and 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Let me set them down here. I think these are some of the best hand traps you can play right now. Nib hits just about any deck right now that isn't Labyrinth, and then like sometimes Trap Tricks if they set up the Rafflesia early. And then obviously Ash hitting the Mirror Match, and just being a really nice hand trap in general, especially if you draw it off of like Albion, Guardian Chimera, etc. Nib in particular though, I've gotten very fond of this card, because right now we're in a format where you can literally have this and a regular end board going first. And like, if your end board gets broken, you can still just win the game, especially in a deck like Branded that has so much follow-up, by just dropping a Nib when they finally think they've broken your board and they try to set up their own. You can just hit them with a Nib, and you just kind of, like I said, you just end up winning the game. These hand traps in particular are really important, because I am on 2 copies of Crossout Designator, and 1 copy of Called by the Grave to wrap up the main deck. I really like these cards. I mean, I've always loved Called by. I'm like an advocator for Called by it too, but Crossout is just such a good card. So I actually put it in because I expected to see more of like the mirror match as well. And of course, like, you know, hitting Brand New Fusion off Crossout is going to be really nice. But Crossout has saved me from so many things. Like, you can cross out Ash, of course, you can cross out Nibiru, you can cross out Board Breakers when you're forced to go first, you can cross out Dimensional Barrier when you're forced to go second, and with so many other people on Crossout, you can even cross out, so really good card. Honestly, if I had the room, I'd probably play a third copy, but I want to be at a perfect 40 cards. I don't want to go over even by just one because consistency is key. So I'm only at 2 right now, and also I'd have to pick up a third anyway. But a third, like if I had to cut something like maybe Spriggan's Kit, I'd probably be open to playing the third copy of Crossout. It's just that good. So that is it for the main deck. Again, a perfect 40 cards there. Onto the extra deck, we have 2 copies of Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, 2 copies of Albion, the Branded Dragon, and 2 copies of Lubellion, the Searing Dragon. Okay, so they didn't all fit the way I'd like them to. I keep forgetting I'm trying a new camera angle and it's a lot more zoomed out. But Mirror Jade, Albion, Lubellion, like really not much to say here, like classic cards. Lubellion is a card I was playing at 1, however I had to bump it up to 2 when I decided to play the Dragoon, because if the Castra opponent rips out your Lubellion, then I mean you're kind of screwed. For the only other Albaz fusion, we are on 1 copy of Rinbrum, the Striking Dragon. I'm not playing the Sprint currently. I haven't seen enough Contact C at my locals to really warrant running it. But honestly, I'd probably find a space for a card I'll mention later. I'll just remove that. And if I really needed to find the space for the Sprint, same thing with Brigand. I just really haven't needed the Brigand. I already have so many ways to search Mercourier. So the real only use for Brigand would be for like an Albaz or Super Poly target to go, because it requires like a little 8 or higher or something. But Rinbrum is all you need, honestly. I was playing this at 2 until I played the Dragoon, because the Dragoon ends up just being a better board breaker than Rinbrum against Castra. But Rinbrum is a really, really nice card, especially not only for that one combo, also because it can just dump a Mercourier, and that's just absolutely free. Also, fun fact, so this is something that I didn't think you could do at first, but because I thought it would have to be summoned properly. But if you send this off of Mirror Jade, you can still use its graveyard effect to summon the Albaz, but you can only summon the Albaz, of course, because this was never summoned properly. But you can still banish it and summon the Albaz from grave. I thought you wouldn't even be able to attempt to do that, but you can, and that's kind of cool, actually. And now, for the actual best card in the entire deck, we have 2 copies of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. I love this card so much. So I think I used to be one of the people that complained about Dragoon just because it was annoying. Not because, like, I mean, honestly, as a card, it's fundamentally kind of broken. It's just the materials that kind of suck. But, like, genuinely, I thought it was really boring to play against, but now it's like, oh my god, Dragoon is amazing. Like, between being an Omni-Negate, between being a burn, between popping things, and then getting really, really huge, like, this card just does it all for the deck. I mean, it stops your opponent using board breakers on you, it blows apart your opponent's board, it prevents anything like Nibiru if you get out early, and like I said, like drawing the Dark Magician ends up being even better, because whatever you were going to make like Mirror Jade or something can just become a Dark Dragoon instead, and then you just end up really winning because Dragoon is broken. There's also been like several games where I've gotten out 2 copies and both of them are able to pop a card because you shuffle back the Dark Magician, so you just make another one. And it's just so absurd. It's really just that good. I love that it lets you blow apart almost an entire Castra board with just a copy of Branded Fusion. I love Dragoon. I'm also on 1 copy of Despia Cards and 1 copy of Masquerade, the Blazing Dragon. I prefer Queritus to Priscanium because not only is Queritus easier to hard make in case you need to, as something like Branded in red, but also I really like helping breaking boards with this card, because, I mean, making your opponent stuff 0, especially if they're on a link deck and they have to have them in attack position, I mean, it's free. Not to mention, a lot of people don't read the second effect, or they misinterpret the second effect, and they end up, like, removing Queritus by card effect, and then you're just like, surprise, Queritus effect summon Albaz, quick fuse with your board. And then also, Priscanian just feels kind of like a win more card overall. I know it's good for the burn and stuff because, I mean, it helps you go into time, but also because it helps you push for OTKs. And I mean, obviously, stealing stuff from your opponent's grave or even just banishing it is really nice. The main problem stems with that, if your opponent already has that stuff in the graveyard, you're probably either already winning or you're not going to do much with just the Priscanian. And then, of course, Masquerade, Tax Dragon. I mean, I love Tax Dragon. I've won a lot of games because of this card. I've noticed some people cutting it, but honestly, I think I really enjoy it still. I still have the room for it because I'm not playing certain other things, again, like Brigand, Sprint, etc. Not to mention, I love that it's a generic target and that it can summon itself back. And then for some more miscellaneous fusion monsters, 1 copy of Dongino, the Dust Dragon, This card is really, really good. Sometimes I wish I had a second copy because I use the Cartesia on like a follow-up turn and then I need a generic target to fuse with it. But I mean, honestly, just the one is fine. It just does so much for the deck though, like sending Albion from the extra. From the main deck, you can send like Ad Libitum, Albion, Saronir. You can even send a Dark Magician. I've sent Dark Magician several times off of this to make a Dragoon. It's so free. And then of course, summoning a free Queritus off of it from the extra deck is really nice. It's really good because if your opponent Nibiru's you or something, but you're trying to go for an expulsion play, you can just use this effect Engrave, banish it, and then summon the Queritus to your side of the field, so you still have the fusion. And even still, if you're not going for the expulsion play, you'll still have an extra body on board that can make your opponent's stuff 0, and has a dangerous floating effect, making your opponent have to play around it. I've also got the 1 copy of Guardian Chimera. Finally managed to get this card last night as of recording this video, and it's so nice to have it. I mean, I was doing fine without it, but really, you just can't get better than Guardian Chimera. Getting like a free double pop and a draw, or double draw and a pop, your opponent can't really do anything about it because like it doesn't target or anything. Not to mention, you're probably also triggering a bunch of different effects from whatever you fused off, like Tragedy, Mercurier, whatever. So Guardian Chimera, mwah, fantastic card, absolutely lovely. And then we're also on 1 copy of Sapelia and 1 copy of Mud Dragon of the Swamp. I'm including these cards together because technically both of them are super poly targets, even though you hard make this more than anything. Sapelia is Sapelia, really good against Castra because Ogre's the only one bigger than it, so that's really nice there. But also Mud Dragon of the Swamp, this is here for like legitimately a super poly target, even though I have hard made it a few times before. This is the flex spot in the extra deck if I need to play something like Sprint, Brigand, anything like that. I would just cut this and put something else in. Like, genuinely, I don't think Super Poly's even come up for it yet, so I'm really heavily considering if Cartesia plus Lubellion making this wasn't so good when I had like Branded Lost or something up, I'd probably just cut this immediately, but this is definitely a card that I'm considering ending up dropping in the future. And that is it for the extra deck. So usually I would end my deck profiles here, give a few final thoughts. Maybe if I was really feeling it, I'd show a combo tutorial if I didn't make them separately now. But a lot of people are always asking me in my videos, Aurora, what are you doing for your side deck? How would you side right now? What's your side deck looking like? And I don't usually do this, but I'm going to show off what my side deck looks like. Again, remember, I do have like a certain local scene, and I really only go to locals most of the time. So it's definitely going to maybe look a little bit different from like a typical side deck, because I do have to prepare for my certain other things at my local scene. But let's go ahead and get right into it. So there's not going to be any sidebar this time. I just kind of like came up with this on the fly. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I am on the Aqua Dolphin and Aqua Neos package. So considering I played like the Air Hummingbird and Bird Up in the side deck for time and stuff, I was like, this is probably going to be gimmicky, because I ended up dropping the Air Hummingbird and ended up just like not doing anything at all. I was like, this is probably going to be a bit too gimmicky. I don't know how I really feel about it. This is one of the best packages I've ever had in my side deck at any point. I don't think I've summoned Aqua Dolphin and my opponent didn't have Ash. I've ripped over like 5+ Ashes off of the Aqua Dolphin. Not to mention the discard can set up your graveyard. It can put something like Branded Opening in there. Or, I mean, you could even burn your opponent for 500 off of this, so it can help go into time anyway. I'm not playing the Air Hummingbird, by the way, because I don't want to look for my Storm Neos, and I don't feel like it's that necessary. I don't go into time too much at locals, and not to a point where going for fusion deployment would be a viable strategy. And even having the Aqua Neos have to be put in the like extra deck, having to make room for this isn't even a problem, because as I mentioned, Mud Dragon is a flex spot, and most of the time, if I'm going first with the Aqua Dolphin, I'm not going to be putting Super Poly in, so I can just remove the Mud Dragon, put in the Aqua Neos, and then it's all beautiful there. So yeah, I really, really recommend this package for all branded players if you're scared of Ash Blossom. It's so, so good. And then of course, you can't have branded without your expulsion targets, 1 copy of Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, and 1 copy of Jinzo. So Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, there's not much to explain here. I mean, a lingering special summon lock for an entire turn is pretty baller. It's a lot better than something like Ra's Disciple or Ito right now, which can die to things like Dark Hole, Eclipse, etc. Even Book of Lunar Eclipse, Book of Moon, stuff like that. And then Jinzo is here because I got folded by Labyrinth, because Dimensional Barrier hurts really bad, and so does Skill Drain and all these other cards. So getting a Jinzo on my side of the board, or even giving it to them because they don't really have a very easy way to out it, is pretty damn nice. Like, the only way in terms of their traps that they would be able to out this Jinzo is to get rid of it with a Big Welcome, but even then they'd have to have a way to put the Big Welcome engraved by, like, I don't know, for example, dumping it off of like a furniture. That means they have to open the Big Welcome and the furniture piece. I also think it's better than Dark Samorg, because Dark Samorg is I mean, it's fine, your opponent can't set cards and stuff like that, but the main thing I like about Jinzo is that if I really need to, I can like branded opening summon in a Luber, right? Grab my branded fusion, and then if I open the Jinzo, I can just tribute summon the Jinzo on top of that, because it's only a level 6. And so, I mean, I'm not gonna really complain about a free 1 tribute trap, like, destroyer. So yeah, these are my 2 expulsion targets. I don't think I really need any, like, other ones. I don't think there really are any other ones that'd be too crazy. And I've been really enjoying, at least the Nightmare so far. I haven't actually gotten into a game with the Jinzo in my side deck, but it will be there in the future, which is really good. For the spells in here, I have 2 copies of Book of Eclipse, 2 copies of Super Polymerization, and 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. I don't really need more than the 2 Book of Eclipse. I mean, like, Branded is already a really good deck when it comes to board breaking against Castor. Literally, all you have to do is open Branded Fusion. So having the 2 is fine. Not to mention, I don't really play against, like, a bunch of different Castor players at once. It's usually just, like, the 2-ish, I think, at any time at my locals. Super Poly... This is an interesting one because I expected a lot more branded players, especially because a lot of people used to have branded. I thought maybe that now that the new stuff came out, they'd want to either like rebuild what they currently have or pick the deck back up again, because they did play it back during like Sword Soul format, for example. But I've seen no other branded players. I've never played a single mirror so far in like the month I've been playing this deck, which I find very interesting, and that's almost like 2 tournaments a week. And then other than that, I mean, when I put this in, I either don't see it or it just doesn't do anything. Granted, there was a situation last night where I completely messed up. I forgot I had the Super Poly in my hand. I could have done a Fusion Deployment play, broken apart the Castro board, but I mean, whatever, I won the match anyway. But honestly, so I'm considering, because you need your normal summon in this deck most of the time, you know, summoning something like a Luber, Kit, etc. I don't want to play Lava Golem or Sphere Mode or anything like that, but I'm considering dropping like these 2 and then one of the cards I'll show during the trap section. And then I'd probably end up just playing like 3 Kurikara Div Incarnate. I'm really trying to pick up some Kurikaras from my locals, because Kurikara is just really nice for getting rid of things really easily without having to use too many of your resources. So yeah, honestly, I'm really just considering cutting this card. It does not come up very often at all, and it just kind of ends up doing really nothing. And then Feather Duster, of course, I don't really like going against trap decks. I mean, it hits things like Trap Tricks like as well, but it's mostly just there for Labyrinth and like Eldritch and any other stun decks that I might go against at locals. I mean, Feather Duster's Feather Duster. And then finally, for the traps, we have 3 copies of Evenly Matched and 3 copies of Dimensional Barrier. I mean, easily some of, if not the best trap cards in the game right now. Evenly Matched rips apart M boards. I mean, your opponent can't really do much about it. And then, of course, as someone playing a deck that hard loses to Dimensional Barrier, it's basically a card that you kind of want to play in your side. I've noticed actually a lot of people only playing 1 Dimensional Barrier, funnily enough, and I mean, it's mostly there for the Crossout target, but honestly, I mean, you just play against so many things, especially at locals, that just kind of lose immediately to Dimensional Barrier. I mean, you got Sword Soul, you got Branded, you got, what's the other one? Cashera, yeah, you know, the best deck right now. Like, a lot of decks either auto-lose or at least can't do very much if they're under Dimensional Barrier. This is the card, though, that I would probably drop down to 2 copies if I put in the 3 Kurikara Div Incarnate, because, I mean, again, half of it's just there for the Crossout target, so I don't get Dimensional Barriered. Not to mention that if you're already playing the deck properly, you don't need to fall back on the D barrier to win. So, I mean, just putting it at 2 wouldn't even be the end of the world. But I have been very happy with both of these cards. And by happy, I mean, please ban Dimensional Barrier. I'm so sick of seeing this card, like, every year in a different format. Well, everybody, that should do it for my branded deck profile. Honestly, this is one of my favorite decks I've played in a while. Probably not of all time, but definitely one of my favorites that I've played in a good amount of time. It's just such a fun deck to pilot, especially when you do your plays properly and you manage your resources well. That's another reason I decided to play this deck over like something like maybe Trap Tricks, because while that is a resource-intensive deck, this deck is really challenging when it comes to managing all of your stuff, and I really wanted to give myself a little bit of a challenge, because resource management has always been one of the things that I've kind of struggled with a little bit in the game. But I've been doing pretty well with this deck, so like even the times that I have been ashed, and by that I mean once, because all the other times I've had Crossout or they just haven't had ash, I think I've gone like X1 or undefeated at every single tournament that I went to with this, even before I got my Guardian Chimera. So honestly, I'm really proud about that. It's just such a cool deck to pilot. You have so many different ways to play around certain end boards. Again, breaking apart a Castra end board is so much fun. I also just love how flexible the deck is. I mean, like, if you look at any Despia or branded deck profile, whatever you want to call it, you'll find like almost the entire deck has like a bunch of different tech cards. Like, not the entire deck's different, but like a lot of people are playing different cards in their builds. Like, granted, I took my inspiration for, like, the majority of this list, or, like, the bulk of it, I should say, the baseline, the skeleton, whatever, from the John Wilkin, Charlie Futch, whatever, top list from Team YCS Las Vegas. But as a branded player, you can kind of just put whatever you feel like in here and play, like, a bunch of different random techs. Speaking of which, if you are a branded player, let me know in the comments below, what random techs are you playing? Because, I mean, there are certain things that some people are playing that others aren't, so I do want to hear, is there anything unique that you found that has been working out for you? I do want to hear about it. But with that out of the way, that's going to do it for the video. If you liked it, please be sure to leave a like, as I'll put this video and the channel into recommended. And if you like this content, you want to see more like it, I'm trying to make a lot more in-depth deck profiles, a lot like better quality ones instead of just like, yeah, here's my cards. Then perhaps consider subscribing, because we're on our way to 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. Not to mention, it supports the channel more than anything else, and it's absolutely free. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Aurora, signing off.